Christmas Eve should smell of pine and cinnamon, not the stale tang of loneliness. I was 32, sprawled on my bedroom floor in a Chicago apartment I'd paid for, when my phone buzzed with a message that carved a hollow in my chest. Thank you for existing. Don't come. My father's words, sharp as a blade, glowed on the screen. I stared, willing them to blur, to soften, to mean something less cruel. Outside, snow dusted the city, and laughter from distant holiday parties seeped through the walls. But here, in the dim glow of dollar store string lights, I was an outsider in my own life, tethered to a family that had already written me off. I'd been carrying them for 18 months, my shoulders aching under the weight of their needs. Rent, $200 a month, wired from my account to keep the apartment we shared. Utilities, $200, because Emily, my sister, swore she'd pay me back when her next gig came through. Groceries, $500, stocked the fridge she raided without a thank you. I was the steady one, the one who worked overtime at a soul-draining office job, who sold my old gaming console to cover her student loans. Emily, 2 years younger at 30, was the family's darling, her chaos forgiven as creative spirit. I didn't complain. Family doesn't keep score, right? But that night, the scoreboard was all I could see. Hours before Dad's text, Emily had stood in the kitchen, tossing her coat over her shoulder like a movie star. Her blonde curls caught the light as she checked her reflection in the microwave door. She was headed to our parents' house for Christmas Eve dinner, a tradition I'd been quietly excluded from for months. Oh, by the way, she said, pausing at the door, if Mom and Dad ask, I told them you're just crashing on the couch. You know, since your name's not on the lease. Her tone was casual, like she was commenting on the weather. My hands froze in the soapy dishwasher, the sponge slipping from my grip. You told them that? I asked, my voice low but steady. She rolled her eyes, flicking a curl. Chill, Claire. It's not a big deal. I just didn't want them to think I'm letting you live here for free. Easier this way. I looked at her, the sister I'd propped up through job losses and late-night sob stories, the sister whose rent I paid while she bought new boots. But I'm paying the rent, I said, each word deliberate. Emily shrugged, already halfway out the door. Yeah, well, they don't need to know that. The door clicked shut, leaving me with the hum of the fridge and the weight of her lie. I dried my hands, the towel trembling in my grip, and sank onto a kitchen chair. The string lights flickered, cheap and fragile, like the bonds I'd been clinging to. Dad's text came later, around 9 p.m., as I sat cross-legged on the floor, scrolling through old photos to remind myself what family felt like. 6 words, no explanation, just a final seal of rejection. I imagined them at the dinner table, Dad carving the ham, Mom fussing over Emily, their laughter warm and complete without me. I'd been fading from their story for years, but this was different. This was a door slammed shut. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but no words came. What do you say to a family that thanks you for existing, then tells you to stay away? I set the phone down, the screen's glow fading to black, and let the silence settle. It wasn't peace. Not yet. It was the ache of a truth I'd been dodging. I was paying for people who had already decided I didn't belong. The kitchen clock ticked past midnight, its rhythm a faint pulse against the silence that had swallowed me since Dad's text. I sat at the table, the dollar store lights casting frail shadows on the linoleum, my mind a tangle of questions with no answers. How long had I been invisible to them? How many more years would I pour myself into their emptiness? The apartment, my cage of obligation, felt heavier than ever. Every creak of the floorboards a reminder of the rent I paid, the life I'd surrendered. Then, something snapped, not loud but clear, like a string stretched too far. I stood, my chair scraping the floor, and moved with a purpose I hadn't felt in months. In the hallway closet, buried under coats and forgotten umbrellas, was a toolbox I'd bought for a shelf I never built. My hands, steady now, closed around its rusted handle. The weight of it grounded me as I knelt by the front door, the lock's cold metal glinting under the bulb. Each turn of the screwdriver was a choice, each click a severance. I worked in silence, sweat beading on my neck, until the old lock fell away and a new one took its place. No hesitation, no guilt, just the quiet thrill of reclaiming what was mine. When I finished, I leaned against the door, the apartment lighter, as if it had exhaled a burden I'd carried too long. I crawled into bed, the sheets cool against my skin, and slept deeper than I had in years. At 8:17 a.m., the sound of keys fumbling woke me. A scrape, a curse, then a pause. Emily was back. The new lock held firm and her fists pounded, each thud a desperate plea I no longer owed her. I didn't move, didn't flinch, just listened as the banging slowed, then stopped. Silence returned, sharper now, mine to keep. I rose, my bare feet soft on the hardwood, and prepared her eviction in my way. On the doormat, I placed 2 boxes, wrapped like Christmas gifts with paper I'd saved for better days. One, medium-sized, held the scarf and earrings I'd bought for her, tied with a perfect bow, my last act of kindness. The other, smaller, buzzed faintly, a phone inside set to vibrate with a looped alarm. Tucked within was a third box, unadorned, a credit card statement in my name, $750 in charges she'd made, and a USB drive with audio clips of her laughing about my gullibility. A sticky note read, "Your contract has ended emotionally and in every way." I shut the door, the latch clicking with finality, and felt the air shift. The apartment wasn't just mine now, it was free. I stood in the kitchen, reheating coffee, the mug warm in my palms. The pounding hadn't shaken me, it had solidified me. Emily's absence was a gift I'd given myself, wrapped in the courage I'd forgotten I had. I didn't know what she'd do when she opened those boxes, but I knew what I'd done. Drawn a line, not in sand, but in steel. The string lights still flickered, but they no longer mocked me. They were mine, like this space, like my life. For the first time, I believed it. The coffee was cold by noon, but I sipped it anyway, the bitter edge matching the memories that clawed their way up as I sat alone in the apartment. Changing the locks had cracked something open, not just the door, but the truth I'd buried under 18 months of sacrifice. It started small, a grocery run here, a utility bill there, promises from Emily that she'd sort it out soon. I believed her, because that's what sisters do. But small became a flood, and I was drowning in her chaos, my life shrinking to fit her needs while she danced through hers, untouched. It began when Emily lost her graphic design job, or quit, she was never clear. Just a rough patch, she'd said, her voice soft, eyes wide, the same act she'd perfected as a kid to dodge trouble. I picked up extra shifts at the office, my desk a blur of spreadsheets and late-night emails. Rent was $200, and I paid it every month while Emily scrolled through Instagram, planning her comeback. Utilities, $200, hit my card because she forgot to transfer her share. Groceries, $500, filled our fridge, though I ate ramen to stretch the budget. Her student loans, $10,000, loomed, and I sold my gaming console, my one escape, to cover a chunk. "I'll pay you back," she swore, her hand on my arm, but her promises were air, gone by morning. I gave up more than money. Trips to the lake, painting classes, even a date I canceled because Emily needed $300 for an emergency that turned out to be a music festival. I told myself it was temporary, that family sticks together. But temporary became routine, routine became obligation, and obligation became a silence I couldn't break. Emily had a gift for twisting things. Her tears turned her into the victim, me into the cold, responsible one. To Mom and Dad, she was the dreamer, her failures proof of a delicate soul. I was the rock, too serious, too steady, until steadiness felt like a sentence. 6 months ago, I stopped going to family dinners, not because I didn't love them, but because each one was a trap. Mom's voice, sharp over mashed potatoes. "Emily's just struggling, Claire. Why do you make it so hard?" Dad's sigh. "You're the stable one. She needs you." I'd nod, my fork heavy, my smile a mask. The truth was, I was tired of being the adult, the bank, the one who paid while they praised her. I'd drive home, the city lights blurring, and wonder when I'd become a stranger in my own family. 3 weeks before Christmas, I found the credit card statement, not mine, but in my name, opened with my ID and email. $750 in charges, a spa day, a tattoo at Ink and Needle, a Target haul. My heart pounded as I called the bank, their confirmation a gut punch. Emily's doing, linked to her phone. I didn't confront her. I watched, silent, as she pranced through the apartment in new sneakers, her Apple Watch glinting, laughing on FaceTime about her idiot sister who never notices. I took screenshots, saved voicemails, and built a case in the shadows. She thought she'd won, but I was done being her pawn. That afternoon, as snow fell outside, I sat on my bed, the statement crumpled in my fist. Emily's lies weren't new, but their scale was. She hadn't just taken my money, she'd stolen my identity, my trust, my place. I'd been shrinking to fit their story, but the locks I'd changed were only the start. I wasn't just locking her out, I was locking myself in, to a life I'd fight for, no matter the cost. The afternoon sun slanted through the kitchen blinds, painting stripes across the linoleum as I stood by the counter, the coffee pot hissing softly. The boxes I'd left on the doormat waited outside, their silent accusation heavier than the morning's calm. I'd locked Emily out, but the real confrontation loomed, a storm gathering in the pit of my stomach. Around 2 p.m. the door rattled, not a knock, but a fist pounding like it meant to splinter wood. I set my mug down, its warmth fading, and braced myself. The air thickened, charged with the truth I was about to unleash. I opened the door slowly, and there stood Emily, her blonde curls tangled, eyeliner smudged into dark crescents. She clutched the smaller box, its faint buzzing a taunt in her trembling hands. "What is this, Claire?" she screamed, her voice cracking like thin ice. I tilted my head, calm as stone. "A Christmas gift," I said, my words deliberate, cutting. She tore it open, the wrapping paper shredding to reveal the credit card statement, $750 in her charges, and the USB drive labeled "For Dad." Her eyes widened, but before she could speak, my phone rang. I answered on speaker, Dad's voice filling the room. "Claire, what's going on? Emily says you're harassing her. This is cruel." I laughed, a sound sharp enough to startle even me. "Cruel? You mean like telling me not to come for Christmas?" Dad snapped. "That wasn't about you. You've been cold, isolating yourself." I cut him off, my voice steady. "You told me not to come, Dad, and guess what? I listened." Emily lunged for the phone, her nails grazing my wrist. "She's crazy, Dad. She changed the locks." I pulled back, holding the phone high. "Oh, please, Emily. Why don't you tell him what's in that box?" Silence fell, thick and suffocating, as her face drained of color. I pressed play on the USB drive, plugging it into a small speaker on the counter. Emily's voice spilled out, clear as a bell. "She's so easy to manipulate. I could max out her card, and she'd still pay my phone bill." The words hung, undeniable, her laughter in the recording a blade twisting in the room. Emily stammered, "That's out of context." I arched an eyebrow. "In what context is stealing my identity okay?" Dad's breathing crackled through the phone, but he said nothing. The truth was a weight he couldn't lift. Then a soft knock broke the tension. I opened the door to find Mom, her coat dusted with snow, and behind her Tom, Emily's ex-boyfriend, his jaw tight with something fiercer than anger. "Emily," Tom started, his voice low, trembling with rage. "I got a call today. 2 Amazon orders, a hotel booking, all in my name. They demanded payment. It was you." Emily's mouth opened, closed, and opened again. "Why would I do that?" she whispered, but her eyes darted to the box, the USB, the speaker still glowing red. Tom stepped closer, his gaze locked on hers. "I think you should go." Emily blinked, as if slapped, her usual tears absent. She had no script, no charm to wield. Mom's face crumpled, but she didn't speak, her silence louder than any defense. I tossed Emily's coat from the chair. "Your things are in the hallway, next to the trash. Figure out which is which." She didn't scream or beg. She just walked out, her footsteps fading down the hall, the elevator's ding a final note. I shut the door, the latch clicking softly, and leaned against it. The apartment felt vast, not empty but open, like a lung drawing its first full breath. Tom nodded at me, a quiet alliance in his eyes. Mom lingered, her hands twisting, but I didn't offer her words. The speaker hummed faintly, Emily's recorded laugh a ghost in the room. I'd torn down her lies, not with anger but with proof, and the weight of that victory settled in my bones. I was no longer their shadow. I was Claire. and I was enough. The morning after Emily's departure, I woke to a Chicago dawn, gray light seeping through my blinds like a promise of clarity. The apartment's silence was no longer a void, but a canvas, and I was ready to paint my justice. I sat at the kitchen table, a binder open before me, its pages stuffed with bank statements, screenshots, and audio transcripts. Evidence of Emily's betrayal, meticulously gathered. My hands, once trembling with doubt, now moved with purpose as I labeled each document, my pen's scratch a quiet rebellion. By noon, I'd filed a police report for identity theft. The officer's nod, a small validation of the war I'd been fighting alone. I found a lawyer by Wednesday, a woman named Karen with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense voice. Her office smelled of leather and coffee, the looped skyline visible through her window. I slid my binder across her desk, its weight a testament to 18 months of exploitation. "This isn't just about the $750 credit card," I said, my voice steady. "She lived off me, rent, utilities, emergencies. My parents enabled it." Karen flipped through the pages, her brow furrowing at the utility contracts co-signed by Mom and Dad without my consent. "This is long-term financial exploitation," she said, leaning back. "You've documented every dollar. We have a case, a public one." A week later, my phone buzzed with a call from Grandma Evelyn, her voice firm despite her 78 years. "Claire, I've seen your evidence," she said, her words cutting through the static. "Your father took $10,000 from a savings bond in your name to buy Emily's car. I've blocked what's left and moved the account to you." My breath caught, the betrayal a fresh wound. "I didn't know it existed," I whispered. She sighed. "I've rewritten my will. My house is yours. You'll do right by it." Her trust anchored me, a lifeline I hadn't expected. The courtroom, 3 weeks later, was a sterile box of fluorescent lights and polished wood. Emily sat across from me, dressed in plain jeans, her usual flair muted as if auditioning for sympathy. Mom wore black, her eyes avoiding mine. Dad just looked weary, his shoulders slumped. Karen laid out the evidence with surgical precision. Bank statements, audio of Emily's boasts, forged utility contracts, and the stolen bond. Emily tried tears, her sobs rehearsed, but the judge's face was stone. "Ms. Thompson," he said to Mom, "did you register your daughter's name on financial documents without consent?" Silence stretched, taut as a wire. "Yes," she admitted, her voice barely audible. The verdict came swiftly, a gavel's crack sealing my freedom. $15,000 in compensation, all fraudulent debts canceled, legal costs covered, and a formal warning on their records. I exhaled, the weight of years lifting as I stepped into the courthouse lobby, snow swirling outside. Karen shook my hand, her grip firm. "You didn't just win, Claire. You rewrote their story." I nodded, the binder under my arm lighter now, its pages no longer a burden but a shield. The bank called that afternoon, confirming a full refund of the $750. I leaned back in my chair, the city's hum beyond my window a song of victory. I walked home through slushy streets, my boots steady on the ice. The apartment waited, its silence not just deserved but earned. I'd fought not for revenge but for truth, and the truth had set me free. Emily's lies, Mom's complicity, Dad's dismissal. They were no longer my chains. I was Claire, not their shadow, and the courtroom had proven it. The fight wasn't over, but the battle I'd won was mine to keep, a foundation for the life I was building, brick by brick. 3 days after the verdict, I stood in my kitchen, the morning light soft on the counter where my binder once sat. Tom, still crashing on my couch, stirred under a quilt, his snores a gentle rhythm in the apartment's new peace. He'd said little since Emily left, just a quiet, "finally," before sleep claimed him. I sipped reheated coffee, its steam curling like a question answered. I felt no guilt, no regret, only a stillness that fit me like a tailored coat. The apartment, once a cage, was now a sanctuary, every creak and hum mine to cherish. A week later, a letter arrived, Emily's handwriting unmistakable on the envelope. Inside, a photo of us as kids under a Christmas tree, her small arms around my neck. I stared at our smiles, her trust in me a memory that stung. On the back, I wrote, "You let go first," and held the photo over a candle. The flame licked the edges, the image curling to ash in the sink. I washed the remnants down the drain, the water's rush a cleansing I'd earned. Emily's attempt at guilt couldn't touch me now. I'd outgrown her traps. Months passed, spring thawing Chicago's icy grip. My parents sent no calls, no texts, not even a birthday card. Their silence was a gift, freeing me from the need to explain myself. I opened my fridge, every item mine, no longer shared with a thief. The sofa, the view of the skyline, they were new, not in form, but in feeling, unburdened by expectation. One May afternoon, an email from Lena, Emily's old friend, flickered on my screen. "She's lost her job again. You ruined her life." I read it once, my finger hovering, then pressed delete. Caring didn't mean going back. I ran into Dad at a gas station in June, the pump's hum filling the awkward air between us. He looked smaller, his hair grayer, his excuses spent. "You look good, Claire," he said, eyes on the ground. "Your mom's still mad, says you ruined Christmas." I raised an eyebrow, the irony sharp. "Funny. She started it with 'don't come,' and I listened." He sighed, grasping for words. "Families fight, Claire. You fought for Emily, not me." I let the silence answer, my car keys cool in my hand. I drove away, the rearview mirror empty, peace settling in my chest like a long-held breath released. 2 weeks ago, a package arrived, with no sender listed. Inside, a photo of me with Natalie, Emily's 6-year-old daughter, from years back. She was 4 then, giggling on my shoulders, her hands on my cheeks. A note in shaky crayon read, "I'm sorry for how my mom treated you. Thanks for everything, Natalie." My eyes blurred, tears falling as I traced her words. I didn't know how she found me. Maybe Evelyn, maybe chance. But her kindness was a light I hadn't sought. I tucked the photo in a drawer, not as a tether to pain but a reminder. Love endures, even when you walk away. I'm not vengeful. I didn't set out to break my family, only to stop breaking myself. Emily's lies thrived because I absorbed their cost. But when I stopped, their world unraveled. Not because I tore it down, but because I left. This wasn't punishment. It was freedom, the kind that comes when you choose yourself over a system that trades love for debt. Natalie's note proved it. Walking away doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you start loving yourself more. My apartment's silence is my anthem now, powerful, unknown, and wholly mine. The Chicago skyline glittered beyond my window, a quiet witness to the truth I'd carved from the wreckage of my family's lies. At 32, I'd learned a lesson sharper than any blade. Love isn't a debt you owe forever. For years, I'd poured myself into Emily, Mom, and Dad, believing sacrifice was loyalty, that my worth lay in what I gave. But their betrayal, Emily's theft, their dismissal, showed me love can't thrive on conditions. I'd shrunk to fit their needs, my dreams deferred, my identity stolen, until I chose myself. Changing the locks, facing them in court, burning that photo, they weren't acts of spite, but of survival. Natalie's note, her small hand reaching through the pain, taught me that walking away doesn't sever love. It reclaims it for yourself. I'm no longer the shadow who paid their bills, nor the daughter begging for a place at their table. I'm Claire, whole in my silence, free in my boundaries. The lesson isn't bitter. It's radiant. You don't owe anyone your soul. You owe yourself the courage to live unbound, to love fiercely, starting with you. Have you ever felt your heart stop in an instant, as if the world around you froze and you were stuck, unable to move or speak? That's exactly how I felt when I looked down at my phone and saw Ethan's name flashing across the screen. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. What could it be this time? A casual check-in, a quick, "I miss you" from across the miles? But nothing could have prepared me for what I heard when I stepped out into the hallway to take the call. His voice came through cold, almost smug. "Violet, I'm divorcing you," Ethan said, his tone casual, like he was telling me about a sale he made at work. "I've already sold the apartment, so you'll need to figure out where you're going to live. Enjoy that." My breath caught in my chest, the words sinking in slower than I could process. Sold the apartment? The place we built together? the home I had poured so much of myself into. The audacity of it all hit me like a slap to the face, but I couldn't let him see my shock. I didn't give him the satisfaction. "Sold it?" I managed to say, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. "You think you can just do that?" "Yeah," he answered, his laugh dry and full of finality. "Nicole and I need the money to set up our life together. She deserves better than a tiny place like that anyway." Nicole. The name stung, even though I'd suspected it for months. Tyler's late nights, his sudden work trips, the emotional distance, each small crack had whispered of her. But hearing him say it so easily, as if I were the intruder in their lives, lit a fire in my chest. I should have been angry, but instead I felt a strange calm, almost like I was watching this betrayal from outside my body. "Sounds good," I replied, the words tasting like ash on my tongue. There was no way I was going to let him see me crack. Not now, not ever. I don't know what I expected when I hung up the phone. Maybe for the world to come crashing down around me, or maybe for me to collapse into a pile of tears and disbelief. But that didn't happen. I stood there, in the hallway of a hotel I didn't recognize, staring at my phone, my hand trembling just enough to make me notice. The tears didn't come, but the anger, the betrayal, they were there. They settled like a thick fog in my chest, suffocating every inch of calm I had left. I thought about everything, our 6 years together, the life we'd built. I'd trusted him. I had put my faith into this marriage, into us. We'd bought that apartment together. It wasn't just a place to live, it was the symbol of everything we had achieved. At least, that's what I thought. But I had missed something, hadn't I? His dismissiveness when I asked about finances, his charming smile whenever I questioned him. I had always believed in his confidence. Now I saw it for what it was, his ability to manipulate me into believing I didn't need to know the details. And how had I not seen it? How had I not realized that every time I was uncertain, he was getting away with everything? The day passed in a blur of client meetings, nodding and agreeing, and pretending to care while my mind raced. Ethan thought he had won, that he had already secured the apartment, taken everything we had built, and left me scrambling. But he was wrong. There was one detail he had missed: the apartment deed. I remembered that one quiet moment months ago when we refinanced. Ethan had signed the papers without a second thought, too focused on the lower interest rate to notice the fine print. I had transferred the deed into my name. I didn't make a big deal of it at the time. I just knew it would give me more control down the line. Ethan never cared enough to ask about the details. Now, I was about to turn that oversight into my weapon. For the first time since that phone call, I felt a sense of control. It wasn't about revenge. It was about taking back what was mine. Ethan thought he could outsmart me. He thought he could strip away everything I held dear, sell our home without even asking for my permission, and walk away scot-free. But he didn't know who he was dealing with. As I thought about it, a sense of resolve washed over me. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry or let him see me broken. This wasn't just about losing my husband. This was about reclaiming myself. And I would start with that apartment. No one was taking it from me. Not him, not her, and certainly not the man I thought I knew. It was time to fight back. I didn't waste any time. As soon as I had the clarity I needed, I picked up the phone and dialed Chloe, my lawyer and one of my oldest friends. She'd been by my side through thick and thin, always the steady hand when things seemed too complicated. When she picked up, I didn't need to say much. "Violet." Chloe's voice was instantly familiar, reassuring in the face of everything. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself before launching into the details. I told her everything: Tyler's call, the apartment, the legal mess, and ended with a bitter chuckle. And now he thinks he can just walk away with everything. Chloe didn't respond right away, but I could hear the shock in her silence. After a moment, she spoke, her voice a mix of disbelief and determination. "Violet, does he even realize that he can't just sell something that doesn't belong to him? The deed is in your name, right?" I felt a surge of relief wash over me, hearing her say what I already knew. "Yeah, it's all in my name. He never bothered to read the fine print." She laughed darkly, but it was the kind of laugh that you give when someone has made a huge mistake. Well, looks like Ethan's arrogance is going to be his undoing. You have legal grounds to stop that sale. This is a fraud, Violet. He's crossed a line, and I'm going to help you make sure he pays for it. I felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders, just a little. Chloe knew what she was doing. So what's the next step? We'll notify the buyer immediately and inform them that the sale is invalid. After that, we draft a letter for Ethan, outlining everything. We hit him where it hurts, his pride, and if he tries to make any more moves, we take him to court. Her words were firm and practical. This wasn't about fighting dirty, it was about following the law and making Ethan see the consequences of his actions. For the first time in a long while, I felt in control. He thought he'd won, but he didn't even know what was coming. The next few days passed in a blur. I was on autopilot, carrying out my work duties while my mind stayed focused on what lay ahead. Every interaction at the office was a mask, the cool professionalism I had perfected years ago. But underneath it all, I was scheming. I was planning. I spent hours at night researching everything I could about real estate law, fraud, and divorce proceedings. I wasn't going to let Ethan slip away unscathed. I wasn't going to be a passive victim in this. The more I read, the more I realized that Tyler had underestimated me, something I'd been doing for years. He thought I was naive, that I didn't notice the cracks in our marriage, the things he thought he could get away with. But I had been paying attention all along. I just hadn't been in a hurry to make a move. Now, though, I was ready. I called Chloe again, keeping her updated on my progress. She reassured me that everything was moving smoothly on her end. The buyer had been shocked but was cooperating, and all the necessary paperwork would be drafted soon. Meanwhile, I gathered every piece of evidence I could find: emails, bank statements, everything that tied Tyler to the apartment. I had every intention of using it all. It didn't take long for the first wave of action to begin. The letter from Chloe went out to Ethan's email, explaining in no uncertain terms that the apartment sale was invalid, and that he could face charges for fraud if he didn't return the money. I read the letter several times, savoring every word, every reminder of his mistake. The satisfaction was fleeting, though. Tyler hadn't responded yet, and I knew it was only a matter of time before he exploded. The waiting was nerve-wracking. My stomach was in knots every time I checked my email, half expecting some angry rant from him or a desperate plea to talk things over. But nothing came. I wanted to think that maybe he was already starting to understand the gravity of the situation, but part of me knew better. He was too proud, too smug to admit he had made a misstep. He didn't think I would fight back. He thought he could walk away from this with everything and leave me to pick up the pieces. But he was wrong. When I finally sat back, allowing myself a moment to breathe, I realized something important. This wasn't just about the apartment or the money. This was about me, about taking back what I had let slip away for too long. It was about standing up for myself and refusing to be a doormat anymore. Tyler had underestimated me, and now he was going to learn exactly who he was dealing with. The next few days would test my patience, but I was ready. Ethan had made his move, and now it was my turn. It had been days since I last spoke to Ethan. My mind was consumed by thoughts of the apartment, the future, and the wreckage of our marriage. When I finally boarded the plane home, the weight of the past few days settled onto my shoulders. I wasn't sure what to expect when I walked back into that apartment, but I knew one thing: things had changed. As I stepped into the apartment, the silence was almost suffocating. The once warm, shared space now felt foreign, like a place I didn't belong. Tyler's things were still scattered around, his jackets draped carelessly over the armchair, his shoes tossed by the door, the remnants of the life we had built together. It was as if he hadn't fully left yet, or maybe he thought that just his things alone would make me believe that everything was still the same. I set my suitcase down with a quiet thud, my eyes scanning the room. It felt empty, but not in the way you'd expect from a home that was now abandoned. No, this emptiness was different. This was the kind of quiet that told me this was no longer our home. It was mine now, and I was about to take the first step in making sure Ethan understood that. I knew he would be here soon. I wasn't ready for the confrontation, but I was ready to face it. I was ready to face him and whatever he had to say. It was time to settle this once and for all. Sure enough, that evening, Ethan stormed through the door. He was livid, his face red with anger, and his phone clutched tightly in his hand. He didn't even spare a glance at me as he slammed the door behind him. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, waving the letter Chloe had sent. His eyes were wide, filled with confusion and rage. "You're telling me I can't sell the apartment? It's half mine." I could feel my pulse quicken, but I didn't let him see it. I stood still, crossing my arms in front of me, and held his gaze. "No, Tyler," I said calmly and deliberately. "It's not half yours. The deed has been in my name for months. You can't sell something you don't own." He froze, his eyes narrowing as if he was processing the words but couldn't quite comprehend them. His jaw was clenched, and for a moment he looked completely lost. "What are you talking about?" he spat, his voice rising. "We both bought this place together. You're just trying to pull some legal crap to screw me over." "No, Tyler," I said, my voice unwavering. "You signed the paperwork after we refinanced. You didn't read it, just like you never bothered to ask me about anything. I transferred the deed into my name months ago." I held up the document, the deed I had carefully kept with me. "You signed it. Don't pretend you didn't." His face twisted into something that almost looked like disbelief, then pure frustration. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" he sneered, taking a step toward me. "You think this changes anything? You're still going to look like a fool when it all falls apart." I didn't flinch. "The sale is already void, Tyler. The buyer knows it's illegal. You've already made your move and it's backfiring." His chest heaved with barely contained fury. "You can't just kick me out of here. This is my home too." I tilted my head, looking at him coolly. "No, Tyler, this is my home. You can stay for now, but only because I'm giving you the courtesy of time to figure out your next move. But let me be clear, I'm not going anywhere." He stood there, trembling with rage, searching for something to say, some way to take control again. But he knew, deep down, that I was in control now. Over the next few days, I watched as Tyler's arrogance slowly crumbled. At first, he tried to bargain. He left me countless frantic voicemails, his words alternating between desperate pleas and thinly veiled threats. "Violet, please, just talk to me. I don't want this to be the way it ends. We can work it out." His voice cracked with guilt at times, at other times dripping with entitlement. He even tried calling me, begging for another chance, his words faltering as he heard the indifference in my voice. But I didn't respond. I couldn't afford to. If I let him back in, even just a little, it would undo everything I had worked for in the past few days. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me again, not after everything. The voicemail messages kept coming, each more pathetic than the last. "You're going to ruin me, Violet. Please, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Can we just talk about this?" The desperation in his voice was something I had never heard before. It felt almost satisfying, almost like he was finally feeling the weight of what he'd done to me. But still, I didn't reply. Chloe was working behind the scenes, making sure every legal detail was in order. The buyer had rescinded the sale, furious at Ethan for trying to sell them something that didn't belong to him. I could practically hear the satisfaction in Chloe's voice when she told me, "He has no leverage left, Violet. We've got him cornered. If he's smart, he'll sign those divorce papers quickly. The sooner he does, the sooner you both move on." It was hard to believe it was all coming together. After months of feeling powerless, I was finally on the verge of winning. It wasn't just about the apartment or the money anymore. It was about reclaiming myself. I had allowed myself to be manipulated for too long, but not anymore. When the day came for the final confrontation, when Ethan walked in looking like a man who had finally realized the depth of his mistakes, I was ready. The battle wasn't over yet, but it would be soon. A few days later, Chloe called me with an update. Her voice was brisk and professional, but I could sense the undercurrent of satisfaction. "Violet, the buyer is on our side. They've agreed to back us up, which makes our case stronger. They're furious about being scammed by Ethan. They're ready to help with whatever we need, including taking legal action if he doesn't return the money." I leaned back in my chair, absorbing the news. The sense of victory was beginning to sink in, though it still felt surreal. Ethan had tried to play me for a fool, but it was clear now that he was the one in trouble. "So, what's next?" I asked, my voice steady. "Next, we send Ethan a formal notice that the sale is void," Chloe explained. "We'll also outline the fraud charges he could face. If he's smart, he'll realize that he's already crossed a line he can't cross. But if he's as arrogant as he's been, we'll be ready to go to court." I could hear her typing on her keyboard, preparing the legal documents, but the words that stuck with me were fraud charges. The thought of Ethan being held accountable for what he had done, his casual theft of my home, his betrayal of our marriage, sent a small jolt of satisfaction through me. The man who had thought he could walk all over me was about to learn the hard way that there were consequences for his actions. I hung up the phone and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Things were happening. The legal battle was on its way, and I could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. But there was still one thing left to do: get Ethan out of my life completely. With the legal wheels turning, I started the process of reclaiming the apartment. I wasn't just removing Ethan's belongings, I was making the space my own again. The apartment had been a symbol of our life together, but now it felt like an anchor, tethering me to the past. Every jacket, every shoe, every stray possession of his was a reminder of the years I had wasted, of the ways he had controlled me. Lauren came over one evening to help me pack up the last of his things. She was a great friend, practical, down to earth, and always there when I needed her. She took one look at the pile of Ethan's stuff on the living room floor and raised an eyebrow. "How's he taking all this?" she asked, tossing a few of his ties into the box with a little too much enthusiasm. I laughed despite myself. "Not well. He's still convinced he can talk his way out of it, but I'm not budging." "Good," Lauren said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "He doesn't deserve a single inch of your space or your time." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much of my emotional energy I had been giving to him, how much space he had taken up in my life, even when he wasn't physically present. Now, as I watched Lauren carefully pack up his things, I felt the weight begin to lift. Every box I filled was another step toward freedom. When we finished, the apartment felt emptier, but it was a good emptiness. The air felt lighter and cleaner. It was as if the space had been reclaimed, not just physically, but emotionally. I could almost breathe again. Over the next few days, the phone calls from Ethan grew more frequent. His messages had gone from angry threats to desperate pleas, and now they were full of guilt. "Violet, please, I made a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you. Can we at least talk?" The first few times, I deleted the messages without listening. There was nothing left to say. I wasn't going to listen to him beg, not after everything he'd done. But then the messages started to get more intense. "You're going to ruin me, Violet. Please. I'll lose everything. Don't do this." The guilt-tripping was classic Ethan. He always thought he could manipulate me, make me feel sorry for him, and make me doubt myself. But this time, I wasn't buying it. This time, I had the upper hand. I had everything I needed to make sure he faced the consequences, and I wasn't going to let him talk his way out of it. I didn't reply to him, not once. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I focused on my next step, finalizing the legal process. Chloe was working tirelessly behind the scenes, making sure every document was in place and every legal detail covered. The divorce papers were in the works. Ethan had no leverage. He had no room to manipulate me anymore. I could feel the walls closing in on him, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't just about the apartment anymore. It was about taking back my life, my freedom. I couldn't help but feel a tiny spark of satisfaction every time I imagined Ethan listening to my voicemail messages, his desperation in full swing. I wasn't his to control anymore. I knew the confrontation was inevitable, but even with everything I had prepared, I wasn't ready for it. I didn't know exactly when it would happen, whether it would be in the middle of a heated argument or after a quiet moment when we both let our guard down. But when I heard the door open, I felt the shift in the air. I turned from where I was sitting at the kitchen table, paperwork scattered in front of me, and saw Ethan standing in the doorway. But there was someone else with him. Sophia, his new partner, The woman who had torn apart the life I thought I had. The woman who had been the reason behind Ethan's late nights, his distance, and his sudden disappearances. I wasn't sure if I should feel anger or pity when I looked at her, maybe both. She stepped into the apartment as if she owned it, looking around with a smug smile, her arm wrapped possessively around Ethan's. "So this is where we'll be staying?" she asked, her voice dripping with entitlement. For a moment, I just stared at her. How dare she waltz in here, as if she belonged in the space I had fought for, the space I had built with my own hands, my sacrifice. I was done pretending to be the victim. "No," I said, my voice firm. "This is where Tyler was staying, but you won't be staying here at all." Sophia's smile faltered, confusion briefly flashing across her face before she caught herself. Ethan's expression was a mix of disbelief and anger. He stepped forward, trying to assert some form of control, but I didn't let him. This was my moment. "What the hell do you mean?" he demanded. "You can't just throw me out. This is still my apartment." I straightened, crossing my arms in front of me, my gaze steady. "No, Tyler, this is my apartment. The deed has been in my name for months, and you—" I turned to Sophia. "You have no right to be here either." Sophia's face reddened as the reality of what I was saying sank in. She looked at Ethan, seeking some sort of explanation, but his face was drawn tight with frustration. He was floundering like a man who had finally realized the gravity of the mess he'd made, but it was too late for him to fix it now. "What is this?" Sophia asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "You told me this place was yours. You said we could move in here." Ethan looked away from her, his eyes darting toward the ground as if he was trying to avoid the confrontation. "It's complicated," he muttered, but his voice lacked the confidence it once had. I didn't let him off the hook. "Oh, it's not complicated. You tried to sell an apartment that didn't belong to you, and now I'm telling you that you can't just waltz in here and pretend like nothing's happened." I glanced back at Sophia, her eyes wide with confusion. "This isn't your home. You've been lied to, and now both of you are going to pay for it." Ethan's frustration turned into desperation. "You can't do this, Violet," he shouted. "You think you can just take everything from me?" I took a step toward him, my voice steady and resolute. "You've already taken everything from me, Tyler. But not anymore. I'm not your doormat. I'm not the one who's going to let you walk all over me." Sophia's composure started to crack, and for the first time since she'd entered the apartment, I saw the faintest glimpse of doubt in her eyes. Ethan's attempt to salvage the situation was falling apart. As the weight of the confrontation sank in, Ethan's arrogance slowly shifted into something else, something more vulnerable. His usual bravado cracked, and I saw a glimpse of the man who was now desperate, begging for something he had no right to ask for. "Violet, please," he said, his voice softer now, his pride slipping away. "I screwed up. I know that. But you don't have to do this. We don't have to end like this." I could feel the contempt building in my chest. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, cutting him off. "You made your choice, Tyler. You chose her. You chose to sell what wasn't yours. You chose to betray me, to throw everything away. And now you want me to feel sorry for you?" He reached out, a hand trembling, as if to touch me, but I stepped back, putting space between us. "This doesn't change anything. Not now, not ever. You've hurt me in ways I can't even put into words. But I'm done with you. I'm done playing your games. This—" I gestured to the apartment around us. "Isn't your life anymore. This is mine, and you need to leave." His eyes flashed with rage again, but underneath it, I saw something else. Fear. The kind of fear that comes when you realize you've lost control. "I've already signed the divorce papers," I continued, pulling the paperwork out from my bag and slamming it onto the table. "It's over, Tyler, and if you don't leave, I'll make sure you never get a chance to come back." His eyes darted between me and the papers, the weight of what I was saying finally sinking in. For a moment, there was no response. Then, quietly, almost defeated, he muttered, "Fine, I'll go." I stood there, watching him as he grabbed his things, moving slowly as if he couldn't believe it was happening. The door slammed shut behind him, and I stood there for a moment, taking in the silence that followed. The emptiness of the apartment had a different feeling now. The weight I'd been carrying for so long, the emotional burden of a failed marriage, was finally lifting. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The relief was overwhelming, but so was the bitterness. I had fought for this moment, for the strength to stand up for myself, for the clarity to recognize what I had been through, and for the courage to walk away from a man who had tried to take everything from me. But even now, as the door closed behind him, I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt like I had won something much bigger than just the apartment. I had won my life back. For the first time, I wasn't a passive participant in my own story. I wasn't waiting for someone else to make decisions for me. I was the one calling the shots. As I locked the door behind me, the finality of it all settled in. This was my home now, and no one, not even Ethan, was ever going to take it away from me again. It felt almost surreal walking around the apartment after Tyler left. For days, it had felt like a prison, filled with reminders of a life that wasn't mine anymore. But now, the space was mine, empty of his things, his influence, his presence. I moved through each room, touching the furniture and rearranging small details that had once been his, and now felt like pieces of my own story. I picked up the last of his things, his books, his DVDs, his jacket that still hung over the back of the chair, and placed them in a box near the door. Each object was another small victory, another step in erasing the past and making room for something new. The apartment felt lighter. It was strange, almost like I could feel the energy of the space shift as I moved through it. The rooms were quieter, but not in the suffocating way they had been when he was still here. It was a peaceful quiet now, one where I could think clearly without the weight of his expectations, his anger, his disappointment pressing down on me. I spent hours rearranging the furniture, placing my favorite books on the shelves, and hanging the artwork I had always loved but never dared to put up before. As I did, I thought about how far I had come. A year ago, I wouldn't have dreamed of standing here, owning my choices, owning my space. But now, I was living proof of how much I had grown. Chloe called later that evening with an update on the legal proceedings. "He signed the divorce papers, Violet," she said, her tone both professional and relieved. "It's official. You're free." I stood still for a moment, letting her words sink in. Free. It was such a simple word, but it carried so much weight. For the first time, I realized how trapped I had been. Trapped in a marriage that no longer worked. Trapped in my fears and insecurities. Trapped by the image of what I thought my life was supposed to be. But now, I wasn't trapped anymore. "I can't believe it," I whispered, a small laugh escaping me. "It's over." "Of course it is," Chloe said, as if it had been inevitable all along. "You fought for this. You've earned it." I smiled, looking around at the apartment that was now mine, feeling the deep satisfaction that came with knowing I had taken control. This wasn't just about the house or the legal battle. This was about the life I was building. Later that evening, Lauren came over with takeout, a bottle of wine, and a huge smile on her face. She didn't say anything at first, just handed me a glass of wine and took a seat on the couch beside me. We clinked our glasses together, the sound of it crisp and final. "Here's to fresh starts," Lauren said, a wide grin on her face, "and well-deserved victories." I laughed softly, the weight of the past few weeks finally starting to lift. "To freedom," I said, my voice steady. The word felt so different now. More than just a goal, it was a reality. I was free. We talked for hours, reminiscing about the old days, laughing about the ridiculous things I had put up with in my marriage, and discussing everything that was to come. Lauren had always been the kind of friend who could make me laugh in even the darkest moments, and tonight was no different. As we finished our wine and settled into the quiet comfort of the evening, I realized something important. This wasn't just a celebration of what I had been through, it was a celebration of who I was becoming. I wasn't the same woman who had walked into that apartment months ago. I wasn't the same woman who had cried in my car after finding out about Nicole. I had fought for myself, and I was stronger than I had ever been. The days that followed felt like a slow unraveling of everything I had once believed about myself. As the divorce was finalized and my life began to stabilize, I started thinking about what was next. The apartment had already started to feel like home, but I knew this wasn't where I was going to stay forever. There would be a new chapter, a new place, somewhere that would be mine in every way. But for now, I was content. I had reclaimed my space, and more importantly, I had reclaimed my peace. The weight of the past no longer held me down. Tyler's name didn't linger in the corners of the apartment anymore. His lies, his manipulations were just that, memories. They no longer defined me. One evening, after finishing a long day at work, I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, looking out at the city lights twinkling in the distance. For the first time in a long time, I felt a deep sense of contentment. I had gotten through the hardest part of my life, and now I was free to move forward. Tyler had thought he could break me. He had laughed at the idea of me being left with nothing. But what he didn't understand, what he could never understand, was that I wasn't defined by the things we had built together. I wasn't defined by his betrayal or his arrogance. I was defined by my strength, my resilience, and the choices I made moving forward. And so, as I sat there in the quiet of my apartment, I thought about everything that had brought me to this point. The pain, the heartache, the betrayal. And I realized that I had come out of it stronger, wiser, and more certain of who I was. I had reclaimed my life. And nothing, not even Tyler, could ever take that away from me again. The next chapter of my life was just beginning, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. Through everything that happened, I learned one crucial lesson. I am enough. For so long, I let my worth be tied to someone else's approval, to a life that wasn't truly mine. But I've realized now that my value isn't defined by a marriage, by the approval of others, or by a house. It's defined by how I choose to live, the strength to stand up for myself, and the courage to let go when something isn't right. I've learned that no one can take away my power unless I let them. And I'll never let that happen again. My hands tremble under the table, but I keep my back ramrod straight, spine forged from 7 years of grit and late-night breakthroughs. Eleanor Hayes's voice slashes through the boardroom like a shard of glass, each word a calculated cut. She's 58, all sharp edges and sharper ambition, her polished nails digging into the mahogany as if she could pin me to the wall with them. The CEO of Hayes Innovations, my mother-in-law, my jailer, leans forward, her ice blue eyes locked on me. Faye Dawson, 34, the scientist who dared to dream bigger than her little empire. "We need someone who understands the corporate game," she says, her tone dripping with fake regret, pooling on the table like crocodile tears. Not a scientist dabbling in the C-suite. Around the room, the board members, suits I've known since I was a grad school nobody, shift uncomfortably, their silence louder than her venom. My husband, Nathan Hayes, 36, sits beside me, his jaw twitching as he starts to speak. "Mother," her glare snaps to him, a guillotine dropping. "No, Nathan. This isn't up for debate. The board agrees." She doesn't even glance at Lauren Pierce, 29, perched at the table's far end like a vulture in a designer blazer, her smug smile barely contained. Eleanor's protege, her goddaughter, her weapon. "Faye's experiments were cute when we were smaller," Eleanor continues, waving a dismissive hand. "But we're going public in 6 months. We need real leadership. Lauren will take over R&D, effective immediately." The air thickens, a storm brewing in my chest. 7 years, countless nights in the lab, every patent that's made Hayes Innovations a prize for Wall Street, all dismissed as cute. I glance at Nathan, waiting for the man I married to rise, to fight. He shifts, his tie perfectly knotted, his courage not. "Mother, maybe." "Enough," she barks, and he deflates, a balloon punctured by her stare. My fingers tighten around the papers in front of me, a transition agreement, a severance package they call generous. Hush money, more like, to gag me while they shove me out. Lauren's grin widens, her MBA from Wharton gleaming in her eyes like a trophy I never cared to chase. "And if I refuse?" I ask, my voice steady, cutting through the tension like a blade of my own. Eleanor's smile tightens, a predator scenting defiance. "Then we'll revisit your contract, Faye. That non-compete clause. 5 years is a long time to sit out this industry, don't you think?" Oh, I remember. I helped draft it, back when I thought I was shielding our company, our family. How naive. I meet her gaze, unblinking, and see the boardroom for what it is. A chessboard, and I'm the pawn she's tossing aside. But she's forgotten something. Every major breakthrough, every patent propping up this IPO has my name on it. Not Hayes Innovations. Mine. I keep that close, a secret ember in my pocket, and rise, gathering my papers with hands that no longer shake. "I'll need time to review this with my lawyer," I say, cool as steel. Eleanor waves me off, already turning to Lauren. "Take all the time you need. Clear your office by end of day. Lauren's ready to hit the ground running." I nod, biting back the retort, burning my tongue. Let them think they've won. They've no idea what's coming. The elevator drones, a slow descent from 7 years of victories to a stack of cardboard boxes by my office door. Eleanor doesn't waste time assuming she's won, typical. My heels click against the polished floor as I step into what used to be my sanctuary, now a crime scene of her ambition. The desk is bare save for a few personal items and a new email pings on my screen. From her, of course. "HR will assist with your exit. Leave all company materials. Personal items mailed after security clearance. Regards, Eleanor Hayes, CEO." I laugh, sharp and bitter, the sound bouncing off the walls. She's already drafting her victory speech, I bet. Boxes loom by the door. Someone's been busy. They didn't even wait for me to sign their damn papers. I sink into my chair one last time, fingers tracing the smooth wood, memories flashing like a reel, late nights perfecting prototypes, the thrill of landing contracts, meeting Nathan here when we were both wide-eyed grads ready to change the world. He's different now, chipped away by her influence, the man I loved buried under her shadow. A knock jolts me. Nathan stands there, tie still pristine, eyes pleading. "Faye, I'm sorry," he says soft as a whisper, stepping in like he's trespassing. "I tried to talk to her, but you know how she gets." "Did you know she'd do this?" I ask, voice steady as stone, pinning him where he stands. He can't meet my eyes, his silence a confession louder than words. "She mentioned concerns about the IPO," he mumbles, "how investors might see it." "See what, Nathan? That your wife's more than a hobbyist?" I snap, and he flinches. Disappointment sinks into my gut, heavy as lead, but my hand slips to my pocket, brushing the USB drive, my patents, my proof. A spark flickers through the ache. "Just go," I say, turning to gather my things. Diplomas, a photo of my folks, that little robot figurine from college that started it all. "Faye," he tries, reaching for me, but I pull back. "Don't." He lingers, lost in his perfect suit, then retreats. I'm alone again, but not empty. They've pushed me out, but they've handed me freedom. And I've got plans. Downtown Atlanta streaks by, a blur of glass and steel as I gun it to Carter and Associates, my last bastion in this war. The parking lot's quiet, but my pulse isn't, adrenaline humming as I stride into the lobby. James Carter, 45, waits there, his dark eyes sharp behind glasses, glinting like he's been spoiling for this brawl. "Saw this coming a mile off," he says, leading me to his office, a leather and law sanctuary that smells like victory. I drop into a chair, tension bleeding out as I spill it all. Eleanor's ambush, Lauren's smirk, Nathan's cowardice. James listens, nodding, then slides a thick file across his desk, smirking like a fox. "Been waiting for your call," he says, tapping the folder. "Let's see what we've got." We dive in. My patents, everyone with Faye Dawson etched in ink, not Hayes Innovations. I structured them that way from the start, with with James's help. Back when I thought I was just being thorough. Now it's my lifeline. No turning back once we pull this trigger, he cautions, leaning back, testing me. I'm not the retreating type, I fire back, meeting his gaze. The tension melts into purpose, a plan taking shape. They can use my tech, sure, I say, tracing a patent's edge. But they don't own it. Those licenses? Mine to pull. James grins, predatory. Timing's everything. We bide our time, let them strut, let them announce that launch. Then we hit. I nod, seeing it. Eleanor on stage, oblivious, while I yank the rug out. They'll need me more than I need them, I say, voice steady, tasting the irony. She called it tinkering. I call it leverage. As I leave, James calls after me. Eleanor doesn't take challenges lightly. I pause, half smiling. Neither do I. The drive back is quieter, Atlanta's skyline a promise instead of a blur. My bag holds that USB, those papers, my future. Eleanor thinks she's cornered me, but she's handed me the board. 7 years building her empire, and I've got the keys to tear it down, or build my own. For the first time today, I breathe easy. This isn't over. It's just starting. Weeks blur into a haze of strategy, my midtown loft now a war room of patents and plans. I've traded the sterile glow of Hayes Innovations for this small, modern space. Exposed brick, a desk piled with legal pads, and a view of Atlanta's skyline that feels like a dare. Eleanor's press release hits the wires, erasing me with surgical precision. Hayes Innovations announces new R&D leadership. Lauren Pierce to spearhead innovation as company eyes growth. She's the new visionary, they say. Her Wharton pedigree polished to a sheen. My name's not even a footnote. I grin, cold and sharp. Let her shovel her own pit, I think, sipping coffee that's gone lukewarm. The days are a whirlwind of meetings, lawyers dissecting contracts, investors probing my next move, allies nodding as I lay out the chessboard. Nathan's texts pile up on my phone, each one a plea to sign that severance package, to fade quietly. Faye, please come home. We can talk. I ignore them, my eyes flicking to the stock ticker on my laptop instead. Hayes Innovations dips a point. Then two. Nothing major yet, but a chill thrill runs through me. They're unsteady, and I'm just getting started. Night falls, and I'm alone with my work. The loft quiet, except for the hum of my printer spitting out patent copies. Nathan calls, his voice tinny through the speaker. You're sounding like her now? He gripes when I brush off his begging. I lean back, the phone warm against my ear, and let a smirk creep into my reply. Maybe she rubbed off more than she bargained for. I hang up before he can sputter a response, the silence settling like armor. Every dodged call, every unsigned line on their hush money deal. It's fuel, stoking a fire Eleanor doesn't see coming. She wanted me out, thought I'd roll over. She's about to learn how wrong she is. Eleanor's voice blares through James's laptop, all swagger and deceit, filling his office with her polished lies. We're crouched over the screen, watching Hayes Innovations' big reveal, live-streamed from their glassy headquarters. She stands center stage in a power suit. 58 years of ruthlessness wrapped in silk, unveiling my tech as hers. Under Lauren Pierce's brilliant leadership, she declares, we're launching a revolutionary product line, medical devices that'll redefine the market. My pulse hammers, a drumbeat in my chest, but my smile's pure frost, curling at the edges as I watch her strut. She thinks she's untouchable, thinks she's erased me. Not yet, Eleanor. James taps the desk, his eyes glinting with the same predatory calm I feel. Ready? He asks, fingers poised over his phone. I nod, pulling up the email I've honed for weeks, a dagger aimed at their core. Subject: patent licensing dispute. Faye Dawson challenges Hayes Innovations rights. It's addressed to every tech journalist, analyst, and investor in their orbit. My finger hovers over send, the moment electric. On screen, Lauren steps forward, basking in praise for my designs, her smugness a mirror of Eleanor's. I glance at James. Hit it, I say, and he does. My email fires off, a silent grenade lobbed into their circus. The reaction's instant. Phones buzz through the audience, a ripple turning to a wave. Investors shift, heads bowing to screens, while Eleanor's speech falters mid-sentence. A familiar voice cuts through. Rachel Kim from the Wall Street Journal, 40, sharp as a tack. Ms. Hayes, she calls standing, these technologies mirror patents held by Faye Dawson. Can you comment on the licensing arrangements? Eleanor's mask slips, just for a heartbeat, before her media training kicks in. All intellectual property is fully secured, she bites out, her voice tight as a wire. Hayes Innovations has every right to what we're presenting. I lean closer to the laptop, my grin widening. Secured, sure, under licenses tied to me, set to expire, in 3 months right before their precious launch. Rachel's not done. We've just received a statement from Faye Dawson, she says, reading her phone, claiming those licenses lapse soon. Care to comment? Eleanor freezes, her composure cracking like thin ice, and the room erupts. Reporters typing, investors bolting for the exits, phones pressed to ears. James chuckles, low and dark. Castles crumbling, he mutters. I nod, victory creeping into my bones, as their stock ticker plummets on my second screen, down 10% in minutes. She wanted a fight, thought I'd stay down. This is just the opening bell. My phone buzzes an hour later, Eleanor's number flaring like a flare gun across the screen. I'm still in James's office, the live stream a ghost on the laptop, chaos echoing in my ears. I answer on the third ring, keeping my voice smooth, professional, a blade wrapped in velvet. Hello, Eleanor. Her snarl crackles through, her composure finally shredded. What do you think you're doing, Faye? Do you have any idea what you've just done? I lean back, the leather chair creaking, and let her rage wash over me. I'm damn near weightless, lighter than I've been in months. Actually, I do, I reply, calm as a still lake. I'm protecting what's mine. Isn't that what you taught me, always guard your assets? She practically spits the word back. Your assets? Everything you built was for Hayes Innovations. You can't just... I cut her off, my tone sharpening. Can't what, Eleanor? Can't stand up? Can't run a real business? Check your contracts. Every patent, every breakthrough you just paraded, licensed to you, sure, but owned by me. Those licenses, they expire in 3 months. Silence stretches, heavy and delicious. I can almost see her, that perfect mask, slipping. Realization dawning too late. What do you want? She finally asks, voice tight, a cornered animal baring teeth. What I've earned, I say, letting the words sink in. We'll discuss details with our lawyers. I'm sure you'll want to review everything thoroughly this time. She hisses a warning. This isn't over. I smile, soft but unyielding. No, it's just beginning. I end the call, the click, a punctuation mark on her unraveling. Nathan shows up that evening, knocking on my loft door, looking like a man who's lost his compass. His tie's loose, hair a mess, a far cry from the polished sun Eleanor molded. Can I come in? He asks, voice raw. I step aside, curiosity winning over spite. He takes in my space, the books, the patents, the life I'm building, and sinks onto the couch. Mother's furious, he says. The board's panicking. Stock's down 23%. I correct him coolly. 23%, yes. I've been watching. He looks up, really seeing me, maybe for the first time in years. You planned this all along? No, I say, honest, crossing to my desk. I planned it the moment she decided my work was hers to steal. I pull out a file, emails between her and Lauren, 6 months of plotting my ouster, calling me a necessary inconvenience. I shove it at him. Did you know? He pales, shaking his head. I knew she wasn't happy. About us, about how it looked. But this, his voice breaks, and I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. She didn't care, I say, and you didn't fight. He reaches for me, but I step back. Faye, please. I cut him off. Go home, Nathan. I've got work to do. He leaves, and I'm alone again, stronger for it. Lauren fidgets at the Edison, her gloss peeling under the cafe's dim lights. I slide into the seat across from her, the air thick with coffee and tension. She's 29, all ambition and designer threads, but today her suit's rumpled, her usual smugness swapped for a twitchy unease. She called me last night, voice shaky, begging to meet. Now she's here, clutching a cup like it's her lifeline. Thank you for coming, she says, barely meeting my eyes. I know you probably hate me, Faye. I lean back, crossing my arms. I don't hate you, Lauren. You're just another piece in Eleanor's game, not worth the energy. She flinches but presses on, her words tumbling out. That's why I'm here, about Eleanor, about what's really been happening at Hayes Innovations. My pulse quickens, but I keep my face still, letting her spill. She's been undermining you for years, she says, voice low. Taking credit, burying your role. She's got files, documentation she's cooked to claim your patents belong to the company. She's planning to sue, tie you up in court until you break. I smile, small and sharp, thinking of my own paper trail, pristine and ironclad. Let her try, I say, my tone a quiet blade. Lauren's eyes widen, desperation creeping in. You don't get it. She's desperate. The IPO's collapsing, investors are bailing, and Thompson Medical's deal with you just dropped. She's talking criminal charges, fraud. I study her, the cracks in her polish deepening. She's not evil, just naive, a pawn who thought she'd won the board. Is that why you're here? I ask, tilting my head. To warn me or save yourself? She looks down, ashamed. Both, she admits, voice a whisper. I thought this was my dream job, but it's all lies. I weigh her words, then lean forward. Send me everything, every file, every scrap she's got. Do that, and I'll make sure you land on your feet when this implodes. Her relief's palpable, a shaky nod sealing the deal. Tonight, she promises. I stand, leaving her with her cold coffee. Eleanor's digging deeper, but I've got the shovel now. My power suit's my shield, a deep navy I picked myself, not one of Eleanor's hand-me-downs, as James and I stride into Hayes Innovations headquarters. The lobby buzzes with nervous energy, staff whispering about the emergency board meeting Eleanor's called to fix me. We time it perfectly. Stepping off the elevator just as the board gathers, their faces a mix of dread and curiosity. My heart's steady, a metronome of resolve as we push through the boardroom doors. Eleanor's mid-sentence at the head of the table, 58 and furious, her voice a whip. This reckless sabotage. She freezes when she sees me, her rage a tangible heat. Nathan's to her right, pale but upright. Lauren's to her left, eyes down, clutching a folder, like it burns. What is the meaning of this? Eleanor demands, slamming a hand on the table. This is a private meeting. I set my files down, deliberate, my voice calm but unyielding. Actually, it's exactly where I need to be. We've got evidence. Systematic fraud, patent theft, corporate espionage. Everyone here needs to see it. Her lips curl, a snarl forming. How dare you? The chairman, a gray-haired vet named Bill, cuts her off, his gaze sharp. Let her speak, Eleanor. Given the stock's freefall, we need answers. I dive in, laying it out piece by piece. My patents, everyone with Faye Dawson inked in black, licensed to Hayes, not owned. Emails proving Eleanor's years of credit stealing, her plan to oust me before the IPO. Then Lauren's files, her forged documents, her scheme to sue me into submission. The board listens, faces hardening as I stack the truth like bricks. Eleanor's flush deepens, her control slipping. This is ridiculous, she snaps, standing. She's trying to destroy us out of spite. No, Mother, Nathan's voice cuts through, steady for once. He rises, shoulders squared, eyes locked on me before turning to her. She's trying to save it from you. The room stills, a collective breath held. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in the CEO, he says, and I almost falter, surprise flickering through me. Eleanor's face goes white. Nathan, what are you doing? He doesn't flinch. What I should have done years ago, standing up for what's right. Bill calls the vote, hands rising one by one, unanimous. Eleanor's out, her empire snatched in an hour. She storms off, a deposed queen, and the board pivots fast, approving my proposal, a Thompson medical partnership to save Hayes while securing my patents. As they file out, plotting damage control, Nathan approaches, his tie askew, eyes tired. I know it's too late, he says quietly. For us, I mean. But thank you, Faye, for showing me what strength looks like. I nod, the weight lifting from my shoulders. Take care of the company, Nathan. Make your dad proud. He leaves and I'm alone with James, who grins. Checkmate, he says. I smile back. Damn right. 6 months later, I sit in my Pierce medical office, the Atlanta skyline sprawling beyond my window like a victory banner. My patents line the wall behind me, framed, not hidden, each one a testament to what I've built. Eleanor's retired, a footnote in the news after Hayes Innovations merged with Thompson under my deal. I'm unshackled, finally free, a board member at one of the biggest medical tech firms in the country. My tech's saving lives now, not propping up her ego, and the thought warms me more than any IPO ever could. A small package sits on my desk, delivered this morning. I open it, and there's my old robot figurine, the one I built in college, the spark that set me on this path. A note's tucked inside, Nathan's handwriting scrawled across it. This belongs with its maker. Thank you for teaching me what real business looks like. And I place it on my desk, a quiet anchor to my roots, and lean back, letting the moment settle. He's right. It does belong here, with me, not buried in their past. My phone buzzes, a news alert popping up. Hayes Innovations completes successful merger with Thompson Medical. Former CEO Eleanor Hayes steps down. I smile, thinking of that boardroom day when she dismissed me as a dabbler, a nobody playing at her game. She thought she'd won, thought I'd fade. Instead, I rewrote the rules. She taught me one last lesson, though. Success isn't just tech or patents. It's knowing your worth, fighting for it with every breath. I learned that the hard way, and I'll never forget it. I turn back to my work, a new project glowing on my screen, unrestricted, mine to shape. The figurine catches the light, a reminder of where I started, how far I've come. Eleanor underestimated me, saw me as a threat to discard. Her mistake. She forgot the cardinal rule, never bet against a woman with nothing to lose and everything to prove. My clock's just ticking, and I've got worlds to build.